Making a movie is always a risk, even for a seemingly heartwarming film like Lilo and Stitch. The story of a girl and her alien buddy is now a Disney classic, but what many don't know is that the creators of Lilo and Stitch had to work in secret at Disney, far from the executives, to make it happen. It was a project that could have ended the careers of a daring producer and a brilliant animator who both took a huge gamble on this unique idea. Give this video a like and subscribe, because everyone knows Lilo and Stitch, but few can imagine the chaos that took place behind the scenes. The story of Lilo and Stitch starts with Chris Sanders. Growing up in Colorado, he found comfort in watching cartoons. Ward Kimball's short films on the wonderful world of Disney inspired him to draw his own pictures. As he got older, he went to the famous California Institute of the Arts, where other talented artists like Tim Burton and John Lasseter studied. His first jobs were at Marvel Comics and on the show Muppet Babies. Even though he was working for famous companies, Sanders wanted to make his own projects. He already had an idea in mind, a monster, but a friendly one. In 1985, he started writing a children's book about an orphaned creature who doesn't know where it came from. The creature finds a home in a North American forest and learns to talk to animals. The young writer wanted to explore topics like feeling alone and trying to belong. Sanders spent months working on the main character. He tried out different looks, textures, and colors until he came up with the perfect design: a blue body, pointy ears, and expressive eyes and mouth. Even though he finished a few drawings, he realized that it would be hard to tell the whole story in just 24 pages. Feeling discouraged, he gave up on the project. But Sanders' life and career changed in 1987 when he started working at Disney. He began in the visual development department and soon became part of the team that made some of Disney's biggest hits, like Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King. He got his big chance on Mulan. He helped shape the story and was listed as the story director. Mulan was a tough project for everyone, but Sanders left a good impression on the bosses. It was only a matter of time before he was promoted to director. However, Disney's future looked uncertain. In the mid-1990s, the departure of Jeffrey Katzenberg, head of Walt Disney Animation Studios, signaled the end of a successful era for the company. Subsequent animated films like Hercules didn't perform well. This led to delays or cancellations of other projects. It was unclear what direction Disney should take next. In 1997, Disney CEO Michael Eisner gathered his team at his family farm in Vermont. 21 executives attended. To break the ice, they spent the day picking apples and carving pumpkins. Afterward, they tackled the serious stuff: animation and business. They realized their recent films were expensive and complicated to make, and they weren't connecting with audiences. So, they decided to take a chance on a smaller, more focused film. They wanted a film where the animators had more creative freedom, like the kind of personal touch you see in an auteur film. Since Bill Pete's 101 Dalmatians, no Disney animated film had been written, animated, and directed by the same person. Eisner and his team were hoping to create a new classic, something as memorable as Dumbo. Creative executive Thomas Schumacher caught wind of the message. He was a huge fan of Sanders' work on Mulan and other films, and he knew Sanders had the vision Disney needed. A few days later, Sanders and Schumacher met for dinner. The executive asked Sanders if he had any ideas for a movie. The animator remembered his story about the monster in the forest and combined it with something he'd been thinking about. In Disney films, villains usually get punished with death. He wondered why, instead of dying, they couldn't have a chance to make things right. That's how the creature would become good. Schumacher listened to the idea carefully. He liked the creature, but not so much the rest. He explained that the animal world was already pretty unusual and that it wouldn't mix well with the main character. He suggested setting the story in a place with humans. Also, he thought a forest would be too green. He recommended moving the action to somewhere like Tahiti, where his great-grandmother was born. Sanders agreed with the feedback, but wasn't sold on Tahiti. The answer was hanging on his office wall, a map of Hawaii, where he'd gone on vacation. He loved the way it looked, the people, and the colors. Setting the story in Hawaii helped Sanders figure out the plot and characters. At first, the monster is called Experiment 626. An evil alien scientist created it to cause destruction, but the monster escapes in a spaceship and crashes on Earth, more precisely on the island of Kauai, in Hawaii. The creature acts like a dog to blend in. A little girl named Lilo Pelikai adopts it. Lilo means lost, which fits her because she's lonely, and her parents died in an accident. Her older sister Nani takes care of her. The monster gets a new name, Stitch. Thanks to his friend, Stitch learns about kindness, love, and family. But other aliens, including the one who made him, are trying to find him. Now Sanders had a more finished project, which he called Lilo and Stitch. In January 1998, he went to Palm Springs and stayed in a hotel room for 3 days. He wanted Schumacher, the development department, and everyone at Disney to get his idea. So he made a 29-page book with drawings of the characters and a short version of the story. When he got back to the office, the animator showed Schumacher the book and his drawings. The producer was really impressed and said they would only make the movie if it looked exactly like the pictures. Sanders was chosen to be the director of the project, but he wouldn't be doing it alone. Dean DeBlois would join him. DeBlois came from Canada and started working at Disney as a storyboard artist. Sanders had worked with him before on Mulan, and they liked working together. DeBlois thought the Lilo and Stitch idea was good, but he thought the story wasn't strong enough. They both wrote the script and were ready to tackle the biggest challenge of their careers. Disney would only spend $80 million on the movie, which was much less than they spent on other big animated films. To save money, they decided to have Sanders, DeBlois, and their team work at the Disney studio in Orlando, Florida, instead of Los Angeles. Being far away from headquarters helped the team avoid being watched by the executives, especially Eisner, who was a tough manager. This was one of the best decisions they made for the movie. During a meeting, Schumacher told Sanders that the movie looked good, but he thought the studio would probably reject it. Sanders suggested that they keep working on the movie without telling anyone until it was more finished. He didn't expect that they would be able to keep it a secret for almost the entire production. After they decided on the budget, the studio, and to keep things in secret, the directors and some of their team went to Hawaii. As I said before, no one else knew about this. Also, Lilo and Stitch was one of the least important projects, and although Schumacher kept the bosses in Los Angeles updated about the progress, he never gave them all the details. When they were in Hawaii, Sanders wanted to really experience the island, the people, and the culture so he could show them in the movie. Sanders also wanted to show the colors and texture, so he told the artists not to take pictures for reference. Instead, they had to travel around with canvases and brushes to paint real places and things using real colors. In Hawaii, they also got ideas for how to make the characters better. Sanders and DeBlois asked Andres Deja, one of Disney's best artists, to design Lilo. Deja had to go to a local school and watch how the girls acted. That wasn't easy because schools didn't let strangers come in, but he tried anyway and knocked on the door of a small school. A teacher and a few students answered the door. Deja told her he worked at Disney and that he was making a movie about the island. Then a girl came out and asked him if he had worked on The Little Mermaid. Deja said he drew Triton, the father, and she was really excited. That's how the artist got the teachers and students to like him. He used that girl and others as a reference to decide how Lilo would look and act. After they finished their research, the filmmakers went back to Florida to find the actors who would do the voices. They didn't only look for actors from Hawaii, but they knew it would be special if they could find some. That's how they found Tia Carrere. Sanders and DeBlois had met her before, when she almost got a part in Mulan. They remembered how good she was and that she was from Hawaii. She got the role of Nani and also suggested using pidgin, which is the way people from different groups in Hawaii talk to each other. She also suggested casting Jason Scott Lee, who got the role of David, Nani's friend and boyfriend. Finding the right voice for Lilo was harder. They started by looking for girls from Hawaii because they wanted someone with a Hawaiian accent, but they couldn't find anyone they liked, so they decided to have auditions. That's how they found Dave Chase, who had experience in TV shows. Sanders and DeBlois were really impressed. As soon as she said her lines, she showed how sad and hurt Lilo was, but then she could also show her happiness. The only thing left to do was decide what Stitch's voice would be like. They wanted Stitch to talk only by making sounds, but Sanders knew he would have to say some words too, as the alien would learn English as the movie went on. Disney suggested hiring a famous actor, but the filmmakers didn't like that idea. The actor might feel silly making a lot of weird noises, and it would cost more money. Sanders made some recordings to use as a guide for when they found an actor. DeBlois liked the mix of growls and words Sanders made, so they decided to use those recordings. With the research in hand, the directors and their small team hunkered down in their Florida studio. Sanders likened it to Disney in the 1940s, when the creatives were young, talented, and brimming with enthusiasm. They simply wanted to make the best films possible, untainted by Hollywood's excesses. For everyone involved, it was a heartwarming and fulfilling experience, though challenges arose. To create the backgrounds, they had to resurrect the watercolor technique. It was a staple of early Disney productions, but had fallen out of favor due to its complexities. As it turned out, the new animators were unfamiliar with the process and had to learn from scratch. Outside outside help was scarce as well. On a trip to California, Sanders met with a leading figure in Disney's background department, who bluntly warned them that mastering watercolors in Florida would be a tall order and that no one in Los Angeles would come to their aid. Sanders channeled his frustration into renewed determination, even securing advice from Maurice Noble, a veteran animator who had worked at Disney in the 1940s. While the team enjoyed creative freedom, the directors had to attend occasional Disney meetings in California. Eisner was there, and he would often scrutinize the agenda, questioning the ongoing development of Lilo and Stitch. To appease him, Schumacher would typically offer a generic explanation. And since most at Disney were more enthralled by 3D animated productions, which were all the rage at the time, the company's lower-budget 2D project received little attention. Consequently, production lingered for 2 years without oversight. The creative freedom the team enjoyed by working in secrecy came with some trade-offs. The budget was incredibly tight, and neither director wanted to request more funds, fearing it might raise eyebrows among the higher-ups. Many shadow effects, details, or textures had to be cut or reserved for the most crucial scenes. However, no one on the team foresaw the significant issue that would emerge just weeks before the film's completion. By mid-2001, Sanders and DeBlois had the project nearly wrapped up. Everything looked positive, and both directors were eager for the initial company screening. However, the tragic events of September 11th unfolded. Sanders was stunned, not just by the tragedy itself. In the film's climactic scene, Stitch hijacks a Boeing 747 to pursue Captain Gantu, who had abducted Lilo. The plane soars over downtown Honolulu but crashes into several buildings. The director couldn't leave the scene unchanged, and they had only a few weeks to complete the project. He devised a solution. Stitch would use Jumba's spaceship. Simultaneously, the Honolulu buildings would be replaced with towering mountain peaks. While they successfully revamped the sequence without ruining the film's pacing, they had to make some compromises to stay within budget. One such compromise was to design the spaceship to closely resemble the plane to reduce animation and detail costs. As a result, the spaceship features turbines strikingly similar to those of a 747. After completing Lilo and Stitch, Sanders and DeBlois faced their most daunting task, presenting their film, which they had secretly developed for years, to Eisner in a private screening. It was going to be the first time the company president would see the finished product without having supervised its production. The directors were filled with anxiety and uncertainty. Their dream could potentially unravel in an instant. Following the screening, Eisner requested a private meeting with Sanders. They met alone in one of the offices. Eisner paused for a long moment, then said, "I like this film. It's weird, but weird in a good way." Sanders and DeBlois had cause for relief and optimism, but the ultimate test for Lilo and Stitch lay ahead, the general audiences. While the directors and their team were crafting the film, the industry had undergone a transformation. Digital animation was gaining prominence, while traditional hand-drawn animation was starting to feel old. Consequently, the marketing team was unsure how to promote the film. Someone proposed creating a commercial using CGI, but Schumacher dismissed the idea. He recognized that the watercolors were integral to the film's distinctive character. The publicists countered, saying that no one was interested in watercolors. The executive and the filmmakers were determined to prove them wrong at the 2002 Cannes Film Festival, where the film premiered. They assembled 500 journalists and conducted a watercolor painting workshop. Everyone loved it. Nevertheless, they needed to grab the attention of the average viewer. Sanders recognized that Stitch should be the centerpiece of the marketing campaign, so he devised an unconventional strategy for the little monster to infiltrate other Disney properties. Consequently, 4 parodies were created, featuring Stitch disrupting iconic scenes from films of the company's second golden age. The hard work of Sanders, DeBlois, Schumacher, and the team paid off. Lilo and Stitch opened in theaters on June 21, 2002, and was an instant hit. Children were captivated by the characters, the story, and the stunning visuals. The film grossed $271 million. Critics also lauded its imagination and originality. The success extended to Hawaii, where the local community praised its authentic portrayal of the island spirit. Lilo and Stitch ushered in a phenomenon encompassing video games, merchandise, 3 direct-to-video films, TV shows, and a live-action movie. Sanders once again provides the voice for the character. Lilo and Stitch originated as a personal project. It flourished thanks to a small group of professionals who valued quality over business and defied dissenting opinions. Despite becoming a franchise, it shows that even within a dominant corporation, there is space for individual endeavors and emotions as authentic as the bond between our unforgettable protagonists. He's one of the biggest names in the business, with fame, fortune, and critical acclaim. But before he became a household name, Brad Pitt had to appear in a movie that he's not particularly proud of.